Let's use what we know about the quotient rule and the derivative of the sine and the cosine function to find the derivatives of the tangent function and the cotangent function. Let's go ahead and start with rewriting our tangent function. So we're interested in the derivative of sine of x over cosine of x. Now this is presented as a fraction or a quotient, so we will be using the quotient rule. So this is going to be equal to the derivative of the numerator, so the derivative of the sine function, times the cosine function, minus the derivative of the denominator, so the cosine function derivative, times the numerator, that entire quantity over the denominator squared. So that's cosine squared of x. Now, the derivative of the sine function is the cosine function. So we'll have cosine of x from taking that derivative times the cosine of x that was already there, minus the derivative of the cosine function is negative sine of x. So minus a negative sine of x times the sine of x function that was already there, all over cosine squared of x. Continuing to simplify our numerator, we get cosine squared of x plus sine squared of x, all over cosine squared of x. And now there's the Pythagorean identity that cosine squared of x plus sine squared of x is equal to 1. So this is actually equal to 1 over cosine squared of x. And now we're going to factor that. We're going to think of this as 1 times 1 over cosine of x times cosine of x. And then using what we know about multiplication of fractions, we're going to think of this as 1 over cosine of x times 1 over cosine of x. And then the 1 over cosine of x function is actually the secant function. So this becomes equal to secant of x times secant of x, or simply secant squared of x. So the derivative of the tangent function is secant squared of x. Now the process is somewhat similar for the cotangent function. So we'll take the derivative of cotangent, which is cosine of x, over sine of x. And we will go ahead and use the quotient rule, as well as what we know about the derivatives of the sine function and the cosine function. So this is going to be the derivative of the numerator, so cosine of x, times the denominator, sine of x, minus the derivative of the denominator, sine of x, times the numerator, cosine of x, all over denominator squared, so sine squared of x. Now, the derivative of our cosine function is negative sine, so negative sine of x, times the sine of x that's already there, minus the derivative of the sine function, which is cosine of x, times the cosine of x that's already there, all over sine squared of x. Now, notice that we have these two negatives. So what we're going to do is we're going to factor out a negative 1 from our numerator. So we'll have negative 1 times and then we'll have sine squared of x plus cosine squared of x all over sine squared of x. And now we can use that Pythagorean identity that sine squared of x plus cosine squared of x is equal to 1. So we will have negative 1 times 1 over sine squared of x. Now we're going to leave this negative 1 out in front, and we're going to factor that 1 over sine squared of x. So we'll think of this as 1 over sine of x times 1 over sine of x. Now 1 over sine of x is the same as cosecant of x, so we have negative 1 times cosecant of x times cosecant of x, or negative cosecant squared of x. Cosecant squared of x. So the derivative of cotangent of x is negative cosecant squared of x. I hope this is helpful.